For reference, I love taking Vanilla's Flock fighter builds and developing deep roleplay around them. It lets me play a central role without hogging the spotlight from other players, and it gives me some writing challenges. Some time back, I created a fighter for my friend's game, and I explicitly made the character hesitant towards violence. He was one of those, I won't start a fight, but I will end it types, at least when it came to protecting his friends. I kinda based his personality on one of my dogs. For the first few sessions, this was fine, but eventually, the DM approached me and said that there were complaints about my character not acting like a fighter. My immediate concern was that I must not have been doing the right things during combat, but none of the complaints were about how I had actually performed during combat, and there were no complaints about my build. Instead, I was just told that my character was too much of a Boy Scout to be a fighter. The DM, a history major, told me that the chivalric way that I was playing my character was historically inaccurate, and that I should play more aggressively or pick another class. This shocked me, as he was normally open to characters that broke stereotypes, and he was a martial artist in real life who was quite a bit of a Boy Scout himself. This wasn't an evil or even edgy campaign, so my character's personality overall wasn't the problem. I was just told to put it with another class instead. Paladins were limited to being god-based only, and that didn't fit with my character's personality either. I just wanted to play a decent, supportive guy who also knew how to fight, and was careful about escalating conflict. Ultimately, despite it being a great group with amazing roleplay interactions, I chose to leave. Even if I create a new character, I just don't know if I trust the DM to work past these kinds of stereotypes anymore. I recently asked the DM if he thought that casters should immediately jump to trying to solve all problems with spells, and if rogues should try to solve all problems with deception. He basically said yes. Am I missing something here? If rogues were expected to solve every problem with deception, they'd have it as a base skill instead of an option. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot magic can do, and casters range in a case-by-case basis on what they're good at. So, personally, I think this DM needs to hit the history books again. Honestly, how you played your fighter is similar to how I played Maseo. Back in the actual play campaign I played with Crispy's Tavern about a year back, Shadow over Kokonos. And Maseo didn't go around picking fights, but he sure as hell ended them. And I even went out of my way to try to have Maseo spare people that I felt like he would see as a victim of circumstance over a true villain. Also, speaking of which, maybe there's another actual play coming by in Crispy's channel that, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna be a part of pretty soon, who knows, didn't hear it from this bird. When I think of a fighter, I think of someone who fights for what they believe in. A dream, a creed, or a couple extra coins in their pocket. A fighter doesn't have to be a brute, even if they are larger than life, and their wits and knowing when or where to strike are just as important as the weapons they wield. But to hone in on the OP's character specifically, they're straight up just Ip Man, using the violence they train for as a means only when they see no other alternative. And I think a fighter that's reserved but deadly is still a completely valid and frankly badass concept for a fighter. Also, anyone who says that's just a monk should jump into the river Styx. Anyway, my name is Jacob Crowe, and welcome to the Crow's Perch. We're in between calling for the removal of every D&D class until we've returned to fighters, clerics, and magic users, with the only playable species being types of corvids. I gather alongside my murder of crows to tell tales of terrible tabletop tragedy. And so, without further ado, let's gather up a murder and dive into today's stories. We were playing a cyberpunk game, where a drug gang, themed to the Wizard of Oz, had taken over an abandoned nightclub. These guys weren't wearing costumes. They had undergone exotic body sculpting surgery, so the Tin Men look as they do in the movie, and the Scarecrows are lanky and wearing old clothes and burlap. Our team wanted to sneak past them, as there were almost 20 gangsters all dressed the same, and they were all confused and high on their own supply. Some smashing their heads against the wall. Plus, our real prize was in the nightclub's basement. Our team's journalist asked if he could do an internet search to learn more about the Wizard of Oz. Game Master agrees, and the journalist rolled very high on a library check. The GM says, "You don't know what the Wizard of Oz is, so you can't look it up. Don't make people roll for things they can't succeed in. Don't make people roll for things they can't succeed in.
Don't make people roll for things they can't succeed in. Don't make people roll.
Stop it! Stop doing this. For what must be the 100 bajillionth time I've said this, please don't make your players roll for things if they don't matter. And if you do it anyway, I'm gonna find your house and leave a pipe. Yeah, I can't say that anymore. I'll leave a stern letter detailing all the reasons why you should stop. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Anyway, back to the story. The journalist says he'll look for Tin Man and Scarecrow, because many cyberpunk booster gangs are basically cosplayers with guns. Someone even floats the idea of dressing up as Dorothy, but the Game Master says we don't know what that is. The Game Master clarifies that the Wizard of Oz exists, but the movie is 105 years old at this point, and doesn't show up in any resources. The journalist offers to go to a physical library and roll again, but the Game Master says no, which is wild because how did the gang learn about them? Regardless, the party recognizes that everyone in the gang is either scarecrows or tin men. They ask to look for a costume store where they can get outfits that look like the characters. The Game Master reiterates that they aren't wearing costumes. They had surgery to look like this. He also says there's no costume shop or party store anywhere in Night City. Stores only carry brand new cyberpunk clothes because of supply chain issues. We ask if there's a community theater or even a high school with a drama department, because they would have a costume and makeup shop. The Game Master relents and says we can go to one of the theaters. It's closed and locked up. We ask about breaking in. The Game Master says, you start to pick the locks, but you realize it's extremely unlikely that they will have costumes that fit a 105-year-old movie, and you decide not to. We confirm that scarecrows underwent surgery, but clarify that they are physically wearing burlap and old flannel. We explain to the Game Master that if they found enough for 20 people, it should not be hard for us to find it. One of the booster gangs is literally dressed like clowns. There must be a thrift store or a gardening supply store or something where they get their clothes. The GM says no. My suspension of disbelief has been completely shattered with the idea that the heart of goddamn California doesn't have a thrift store or a gardening supply store. I've been around enough suburban mothers and have seen enough HGTV to know that both of these statements would simply be untrue. Otherwise, the Property Brothers would be out of business, much to the disappointment of middle-aged Night City mothers and bottoms across the West Coast, who couldn't afford to shelf out the Eddies to buy their steamy, limited edition brain dance. Alright, Chooms, let's zero the rest of this commentary until the end, and get back to biz. As players, we got frustrated because we didn't want an all-out fight, and we said this to the Game Master directly. It felt like our role-playing options were evaporating, so we flock around a little bit. We collectively float getting sci-fi body sculpting surgery, since rules-wise, it is low cost, and can be done in an afternoon. We could just pay the same price to get changed back to our original form when we're done. The Game Master blew up at the idea of everyone getting exotic body modification surgery, and took the reins. Here's how this is going to work. You go back to the nightclub. There are 5 guys at the front door. There are 2 guys at the back door. What do you do? From there, we played the rest of the scenario as intended, meaning we killed everyone over a 3-hour combat encounter, and then our characters needed a week to recover from their injuries. If you're going to railroad like this, at least make it entertaining. If you're telling me I have no choices to make it all, it better be because you set up the most exhilarating combat set piece. With cool, fast cars speeding down the highway, Max Tack shooting at you from overhead, and a cyber psycho jumping onto your car just as you're about to spin out and— oh my god, is that a rocket launcher? No. He didn't do any of that, did he? Instead, this Game Master gave his players the tabletop equivalent of tying them down and forcing them to play 12 hours of Metal Gear Survive. Couldn't be me. So, my first post here. and it's a bit of a rant/vent. I recently started a Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaign for a few friends I had, and a new player. Everything seemed fine. We were discussing character concepts for a bit, deciding what everyone would play at Session 0. That guy decided he'd play a Magus. We'll be referring to them as such from now on. And at character creation, he already gave me red flags when he started threatening a player with in-game PvP over just a character concept. When I said no PvP is allowed, and we can talk it out here why the character is not suitable, they sulked and complained it would be more interesting to solve it in-game. Now personally, I don't mind some party drama, but I didn't want the entire game to devolve into the party constantly trying to kill each other. And neither did the other player, who just decided to rework his entire concept and settled for a fighter. I get a short backstory from everyone but Magus, who just describes their character as a demon hunter, and leaves the whole thing there. Game day rolls around, and we do the whole character introduction thing. Everyone is describing their characters and interacting with each other. Except, you guessed it, Magus, who is sitting alone in the corner, and refuses to talk to the party because they don't trust them, and would rather meditate instead. The party starts exploring the place. They aren't sure where they are or what's going on. They look around and find an NPC. The fighter and new player, Bard, start conversing with the NPCs and having fun, when suddenly, Magus yells, "I run over there and shut the door between them and the NPCs." This was red flag 3 at this point, and I'm getting annoyed. To annoy me further, they start moving their token around the virtual tabletop, looking around corners while the conversation is going around. So I'm forced to pause the game, and kindly ask to not open the doors and wander without telling me, since I can't describe 2 scenes at once. This culminates into the Magus smugly asking me every time, "Oh, may I open the door? May I walk in this direction?" Even during combat, which only aggravates me further. They push into the dungeon and eventually meet a friendly NPC. Magus immediately distrusts them, robs the NPC, and when the NPC complains about it, yells slurs at them and says I want to kill him. The rest of the party says, "No, you can't. We will not let you." Upon which he smugly replies, "Tut tut, GM said no PvP, so you can't stop me." I obviously don't let this happen, and just put a blanket ban on him killing the NPC. Everyone else wants to live. Fighter has an in-character conversation with them, trying to be their friend, and ends up being mocked by the Magus as, "You are a pathetic fool who wastes time burying corpses and will die for trusting the wrong people. Also, I don't need to worry about morality because I'm strong." Which makes me cringe to the edge of my spine. We end the session not long after. I thank everyone for the game and leave. The other players have noticed I'm aggravated and ask me if I'm fine, upon which I realize I'm not. I try to have a conversation with Magus, explain why this wasn't okay, but I just get called an idiot who can't differentiate in character and out of character. After that conversation, I told them they aren't welcome anymore and blocked them. I'm still wondering what they were thinking acting like that. Damn, they sound like an edgelord loser that isn't worth keeping around for even the brief moment you had them at your table. Something of what we've been calling on the channel a pizza cutter edgelord. All edge and no point. But I personally love that they made the accusation that you couldn't differentiate between in-character and out-of-character actions, when they were the ones using an out-of-character justification to defend themselves from the wrath of the party, based on their very stupid in-character actions. But on a positive note, it's nice to see the rare story where someone gets kicked before they ruin the game. Let's get more horror stories like this. I'd like that. But unfortunately, such a story will have to wait until next time. And if you enjoyed today's stories and would like to see more of them, then please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. 1 like equals 1 birdseed, and if I have enough of them, I can feed me children. I don't feed the children. Who am I kidding? That's what working in the mines is for. But since you're already here, why not leave a comment? Can't think of a comment? Then leave the comment, Pizza Cutter. So I know you made it to the end of today's video. Oh hey, there are names on the screen. These names belong to my patrons, of which there are still a lot of for some reason. I'm going to read these names in silly voices now, so if you think that's funny, you should sign up on the Crow's Perch Patreon, and join the bird aristocracy, like our Counts of Quills, like Fairy Fire, Just Monica, Shepdog, Evix, King Drazil, Christian Pip, Haley Thompson, Zero Fang, and Netscape Navigator. But of course, if you give $5 instead, you could become a Baron of Beaks, like Spooky, Archangel Nuriko, Keone, Jonathan Fenton, Miss Tiger Beans, Kieran Slater, Running Bear, Haley McAuliffe, Brittany Mars, Lady Spectra, Oz Turok, The School Bus, Kuntos Weasel, Carter Spawn, Lord Rend, Den of the Drake, Mick Eatley, and Onya. Or if instead you'd like to petition for the fund to get all of Crow's children out of work in the mines, you could give $10 instead. Yeah, like the Dukes of Feathers, like Repetitive Debug, Xeno Cruz, Angrad, Grunt, Kivemind, Jarrett Soor, I like Jarrett Soor, and Matthew Moquini. So, do I get paid now, hello? And so with all that out of the way, I will see you next time, as the crow flies.